What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Life's a Garden. Today's guest is the owner and operator of Whole Hog Breakfast Sandwiches. You may have seen him roaming around downtown, bouncing bar to bar, slinging sandwiches, and if you do happen to cross his path, do yourselves a favor and get one of those sandwiches because they are delicious. He is also the co-host of a podcast called CanesCast, which covers the Miami Hurricanes and all college football. I'm going to leave a link in the description so you can go check that out. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show, Garrett Halsey. So I suppose the best way to start off, let's give your business a shout out.
All right.
So Whole Hog.
Yeah.
How long you been doing that?
It's almost 4 years.
Really?
Yeah. Yep. This November would have been 4 years. I started the shop down there. Yeah.
Okay. Right on. And it's kind of had evolutions throughout because if I remember right, you had like a shop down right next to the Crystal, didn't you?
Yep. It was right next to the Crystal, and then I actually work from kind of home in between a little bit, and yeah, it's gone in a million different morphins. Now that's where I work out of, is my little house basement over here.
Okay.
Just off 13th now too. So
right on.
Yeah.
So and you own it, right? That's your business.
Yep. Just me and me alone too. So,
okay. And
yeah,
what got you like wanting to start doing that?
Yeah, this is it was all, I was working down at Doc Harper's, was really the final step. But there's kind of an evolution to it. Like it kind of started, I don't know if we want to talk about this in the podcast again, but like, I used to have this, crummy job at, the call center down there working for the cable company. So when I met my kids' mom, we ended up having, she stayed at home, but I was kind of the working body. And then I started making this sandwich just kind of out of necessity. It was like, I don't know if I want to dig on her, but it was really the way I make it and produce it now is like the whole thing. It's not necessarily like the ingredients or anything like that. It's nothing special about it. It's just really the way the product is produced. And it was like literally out of just kind of more or less disdain for having to do dishes.
Okay.
Right. So breakfast, like the biggest thing is like you fry egg, you gotta toast bagel or whatever it is, whatever ingredients you use in sausage, ham, egg, all that stuff. So it really became, I started microwaving this thing as kind of a, without using dishes. So it's all like paper plates. So where everything that I was done with, I could just discard it. Right. Cause literally my sink was full of dishes all the time. And I was like, well, motherfucker, I'm hungry and I want to, go to, it was just in the middle of this job. I was like, I want to take something to breakfast. So it really started kind of at that job because I'd make this sandwich, and just for me. And then I had a friend who was going to start, we were kind of coming to this little head in our little apartment. It was a retention team at the time. And then this friend was going to buy a little food truck. And I kind of in jest told her, I was like, I'll sell you this recipe. It wasn't really a recipe. It was just I thought, the way this thing works, it's really cool. I mean? Everybody I could imagine would love to make something nice and easy, but literally no cleanup after you're done, right? That's like, I love cooking, but I hate cleaning. So I honestly, I said that out of just kind of being a twack. Like I didn't really have a recipe to sell her. I was just like, dude, I got this cool idea. You can have it and you can use it for your little, it was called Sassy Meatballs. I still remember the name she used for it.
I remember that.
She had it couple years or so, I think. Her name Nikki. And so then, yeah, man, it snowballed. Like I actually made it for the group of the little agents. There was like 10 of us. Kind of make 5 or 6 of them one day and just handed them out. And then I started a new job because I left the cable company. Wasn't terribly long after that. I was working in a construction job. And then I started kind of making it in the mornings, was where I really, really like did it all the time. Right. And then I kind of, every once in a while make one for one of the guys at work or something like that. Maybe make 2 or 3 of them. And then I ended up getting out of, well, I left the cable company. I worked for this construction job, and then I ended up working at AT&T. And I did that for a good 3 years. It was after I had left AT&T, dude, and I had been in sales all this, like 10 years or so, customer service, sales, all that kind of stuff. And I was just dead set on. I went into another job where this one of the local car dealerships had built an application to build online sales, like, you know, to take you through a whole purchasing process. And I honestly thought, dude, I thought that was my end game. I really thought, you know, I'm going to get into this really cool software company at the beginning and to grow with it. And, you know, that would be the last thing I'd ever have to do. Well, it only lasted like 6 months. And then I ended up, really, I was on my way to go out and apply for a guy I worked with at AT&T was managing the T-Mobiles. And I was on my way to go bring him, like, I'd already met with him and his regional manager the day before. And I was like literally just going out there for like a formalization. And I had my resumes with me, and I'm on my way on the highway. I was at my parents' house, and I get off the highway, or I stop at the Rib and Chop House on my way down there. And this is kind of where this all takes hold. So I'm sorry for the long answer.
Oh, you're good.
But so this was like literally, I'd gone in and I'd worked at this restaurant for a good it was like 9 months. And one day, the same thing. Remember, I told you I'd sell this recipe. So I told this gal, the gal who was managing it, I would sell her this recipe. I was like, you know, we can make it as a special one of these days, and, you know, just cut me in on it, like, you know. So I told her in jest that I wanted her to pay me $2 million for this recipe. Yeah, and she gave me that. Well, okay, you dummy. But it actually, this is why this is all kind of important. She said at that time, she's like, no, we're never going to buy your recipe, but it's not a bad idea, and it's a really good sandwich. You know, coming from a place that's, you know, pretty high quality restaurant. I was like, all right, that's pretty encouraging. But she was like, what you need to do is you just need to make these sandwiches and just run around town at, like, you know, stop at the construction sites and just unload them, you know, unload them there, unload them that way, you know. And so when I left the chop house, I went to worked at Doc Harper's for about, you know, it was like the right around summer of 2019, and then I started working at my buddy's casino over here, the Palms Grand Casino. So I was at Doc Harper's in this casino, and so this is where it really all comes to head. So I never really, I was kind of pissed a little bit, you know, like, oh, I think this thing is really actually worth something, you know. And again, it's a whole process of the thing, to way to build it. That's I think the good idea. It's not the ingredients. It's nothing really to do with that. But I was like, you know, okay, well, screw you guys, kind of, right? In my mind, I never had a bad attitude about it. But I was like, oh, I'm gonna, you know, kind of file that away. Yeah. So I'm at Doc's, and I'm at this casino over here, and it just starts becoming like a thing where, like, there is no food after 10 p.m. in our area, right? Right. So I started making them every Friday and Saturday. I worked at Doc's. I used to bring a cooler, and I had like enough ingredients to make 5 or 6 of them, and I would just make them in their microwave down there at Doc's, and I would just hand them out to customers. I wouldn't sell them or anything like that. But I mean, it started becoming a thing where I had enough people like coming back like the next weekend, like, hey, do you have your sandwich stuff, right? Then I started doing it at the casino there, and so I kind of got a very, very small following. I mean, we're not talking a lot of people or anything, but it kind of resonated with me that, like, okay, I can, you know, this is obviously somewhat attractive. And then I have it on, it's on my different YouTube channel. It's on my Whole Hog Breakfast Sandwich YouTube channel. And then I walked by the spot that I was in there at the Crystal, and I just saw this sign in it, and it had the dollar you wanted for rent. And I just remember looking in the window, and the people that were in there before was Mazevo Coffee. And I mean, like, they'd pulled all their gear out, but they'd left, you know, just enough for like a shelf. And like the way I looked in there, and I was like, I could see it like as clean as day. I was like, dude, I could just make this breakfast sandwich. It's just, you know, I could set these microwaves right up on this little thing. I don't have to rent out the building or anything. So then I started sitting down, dude, and like it was like literally a couple weeks. I kind of sat down and started doing numbers about like how many can I sell, like what is really kind of a good expectation. And like finally I was in the Crystal one day, and I was talking to one of the guys that actually had one of the shops there on the block, and I was like, man, I have this really cool idea. I really want to use that space. I was like, but this is like not a business. This is like, you know, just me throwing things together. And it was like really that conversation. He was like, dude, you need to go do this. He's like, talk to Larry. Larry owns the building down there. He's like, he's the coolest guy. He'll be if anybody you could just walk up to with kind of a half-brain idea, this is the guy. So that was it, dude. I called the number. I was like, all right, man. I called the number, met with Larry probably another day, and then literally it was getting home from there. So yeah, and then the good bad timing of it was like, you know, the pandemic showed up like 3 months right after I'd opened the doors, and I mean, like, literally every week was higher and higher right up until that day. Damn. I mean, things were starting to go really, really well. I had a buddy come down and help me on the weekends for, you know, enough time. Like, I started getting smashed. Like, it was a small shop. People would kind of be lining up at the door. It was like from like 1 till 2 till about 3 o'clock at night. We had, you know, the whole thing was jam packed.
Yeah.
So that was like the only close enough to employee I ever had. And he was a really good friend of mine. I'd worked with him in the chop house, a really smart cat. His name's Tyler. And he helped me build the logo. And this is all kind of in this one video. If you ever are on that website, like, it kind of goes through the evolution of it a little bit. But like, I had like 7 or 8 ideas that another friend of mine who was teaching at Lewis, no, he wasn't Lewis Clark. He was at St. Francis.
Oh, okay.
So he had one of his classes, you know, throw some ideas together. And I mean, like, I have no computer skills at all. Like, computer graphic design is totally out of my element. But these kids, like, they came up with, there's a bunch of really cool ones. So I kind of morphed a couple of the really cool ones together to come up with this simple logo. My buddy Tyler was the one that actually put that all together. Man, he helped me build the website. He helped me build the original menu that I had in the shop and stuff like that. So he was super instrumental on me getting as far as I did. Because again, the whole idea was like to just have one employee, whether it was me or, you know, someday just somebody else, but like not 3, 4, 5,
not a bunch
6
of
people.
overhead.
Yeah. And again, this was so weird because it was before the pandemic. I was like convinced that was going to be harder and harder to come by. It was people that wanted to work for whatever it is, you know, and keeping people motivated and stuff like that. So I was really wanting to concentrate on just as small as humanly possible. If one can be done, then that was how I was going to do it. And then, the pandemic showed up, and, you know, I had to really take a 6-week break because the whole service that I was offering to the community was like literally from midnight to about 3 a.m.
And that's when
every night of the week. Before that, I could have a couple people here and there, but it was not the game. But that was what was kind of rough about the pandemic, because like, it was gone. I remember being in that shop, dude, and like, that's a busy street, First Avenue right there. And like, just being ghost town for like 6 weeks. I mean, it was supposed to be 2 weeks, and it was 4 weeks, and it was 6 weeks. So it wasn't like we knew exactly how long. It was just kind of this morphing thing. And I'm sitting there like, you know, first I was like, all right, a 2-week break's pretty awesome. I could use one. Thought, you know, okay, I can see where we're headed in this. And then it was 4 weeks, and then it was 6 weeks. And then eventually I was like, this is not coming back. Even when things come back, what I was doing and what I was fitting is gone.
Won't be the same, yeah.
Yeah. So really, that was a decision I had to make at that time. Like, how am I going to survive post-pandemic? Because again, what I was filling was literally not available. Nothing was open past 10.
Yeah.
So all the restaurants were still doing their own thing up to that point, and then everyone was going home.
And then you had all these extra mandates that you had to abide by, and that's hard for a small business.
You know, and I got to say, I avoided a lot of that by having literally no bodies to account for it, right? And like, the way that I produced this product was like, it's literally a microwave. That's all I ever used for as far as a cooking utensil.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of that was like, I felt good about that. And I literally, people were like, no, you can't say that to people.
Oh, 1 second. This is going to be jarring. There. There was a buzz going on.
People were like, don't ever tell anyone you microwave food. And I'm like, no, man, I happily, like, because at first the shop, like, the microwave was right behind me. So everyone that came in, like, saw that's how I produced it. But I was like always upfront about the microwaving thing.
Yeah. I
was like, dude, you have no idea how many times I sat at the Ribbon Chop House and running in that kitchen, go get desserts to make for people. And like, we're literally log jammed on this one microwave for standing around to cook the little, the apple pie or whatever it was.
You'd be surprised how many like dishes in large,
but it's like a hidden, like, you don't talk about it in a kitchen sense, right?
Yeah.
Like, they do it, but it's not something that people are like open. Like, if you're a cook, like you're a chef, like you're not talking about your microwaving.
Right.
You're like, you do it out of necessity, but you put it in the back. That's why kitchens are built the way they are.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so again, I was like, no, man, that's not me. I'm kind of like the contrarian type of mentality. Like, if you guys think it's cool, I'm like, maybe I don't even think it's cool, or if you think it's stupid, I think it's a good idea.
The ultimate thing that matters is if the product tastes good. You know,
100%.
like it doesn't matter what does it matter how it's. I mean, obviously, you don't want it to be made out of like plastic or nothing, you know. But if the product is good, who cares how it's like how you're cooking it,
right?
You know, whether it's microwave or whatever.
And I wanted to like kind of almost like surprise people. Like I wanted the microwaves to be there because I wanted people to be like, "Oh crap, that comes out of a microwave." All right, you know.
Yeah.
And it was kind of funny because I had 2 or 3 people that like used to come in all the time, and then they're like, "Well, no, I make it at home. I don't need to come and buy them from you." And I honestly thought that was cool. I was like, "Oh, that's kind of cool. People can, you know, it's not a secret."
But
yeah, it was
seems
kind of,
like you had the right idea, and I'll give you. I just want to say this before I totally forget. I got to give you a ton of credit on just being the bouncing around to bars. What a great idea! Like it's so smart because and the idea of doing it that late like that because people are drinking, people are having fun, and then like you said, a lot of people don't want to leave the bar to go get food or the only things available are like fast food and stuff like that, and even some of that's not even available. And you don't got to wait in a line. The food comes to you.
Yeah.
It's perfect. It's a great business model. And like, I just want to give you kudos on that. But
so just to go back up, that's where that gal, like, and again, this is like literally your 3.5 now, like you're talking about. That's kind of where I'm at this stage. But literally, it was going back to her telling me that when I worked at the Chop House, you're doing this. This is what you should do. And so, like, literally, the shop was good and bad, you know. And then I did it as this food truck thing for 2.5 years in between that, and then had the unfortunate the fire and stuff like that. So literally, I'm like sitting here collecting myself, and I actually did start going out while I still had the trailer going.
Yeah.
But it was like literally going back to her telling me that. I was like, I want to get rid of all the things that I had like morphed into on this menu. It was literally the breakfast sandwich.
Yeah.
I started making burritos, and like of all the things, the burrito is probably my most like people like love the breakfast burrito. It's a little different, like kind of a little different flair to a breakfast burrito. But like I'm telling you, that was like the following was to that.
That was the
burrito.
Yeah.
And like what kind of it's again, I was like the original thing is like the coolest part of it, but it takes a little longer to do the breakfast burrito. And right, my thing was what one person to scale. It's you got to be as fast as possible. Like literally, it takes 2 minutes to make a sandwich in mass production, like the way I'm doing it nowadays. But the burrito takes 4 minutes. So I mean, like I'm like sitting there, I'm like, God, why do people love the product that takes me twice as long to make? It's kind of like it's like this struggle in my head, right? Mm-hmm. But literally, like I still have some people reaching out, man. Where's the burrito? Where's the burrito at?
Hey, that's good to have a product that's in high demand.
I know. I don't want to say it was anything I disliked, but like it literally kind of always blew my mind. People love breakfast burritos, man.
I love breakfast
burritos. Absolutely, it's like literally the thing. But like you're saying, man, and thank you. I really appreciate the kudos. And that's we're getting to meet people and you know the experiences that I literally last night was a really fun night.
Yeah.
And, I got to run into you last night. And your cool family, man.
Fam.
I've known your uncle for like almost 20 years.
Really?
It's been that long. Like I worked at this casino way, way, way back in the day. I'm talking like 2009 or something like that. I had to have been before that because I started. Yeah, it was like around 2008 and 9. It was right after the first real bad market crashes, stuff like that. So I mean, I've known Mike for so long.
Oh wow, that's
and he
crazy.
was like literally one of the most. He like casino games hard. Like it's fun, but dude, there's a lot of people you have hard times helping.
Yeah.
And Mike was like literally one of the coolest human beings. I always look forward to when Mike would come in. We'd sit in I'd always have like the classic rock station on, man. And he'd, give me cool tidbits and stuff like that. We just jam and dude, have a good time. Mike, your uncle, right?
Yeah.
Is one of my favorite people on the planet. So having run into him more recently here with your cousin Aaron, and I've only more recently kind of met him through the Crystal people and stuff. But like that's now that I'm doing what I've been doing for like the last 6 months, this has been the most fun as far as like the business sense, because it's been kind of a rat race. I've had good times and certainly successful periods, but like this is the most enjoyment I get out of doing this business as I've been doing it, is like just going out and hanging out at the bar, and really you're hanging out and you're making money too.
And you're building clientele because you're building a rapport with people. you're getting that face-to-face interaction. People are like, oh, this is a cool guy. Like, even like it almost helps to get people where even if they're not that hungry, now they just want to help. Like, they just want to support the business, and they might be slightly, slightly hungry. And it's like, that's how I feel half the time. I'm just like, I could eat any time of the day. But it's like having that rapport and having that like face-to-face interaction, it just builds that clientele.
And like, even just an example, like last night. So I went into Doc's, and there was this really nice two people. They weren't a couple, but they were a guy and girl, and they were just really good friends apparently. And they're from out of town. I mean, they're from this guy lives in Wisconsin, has a really cool, successful business. So literally getting to meet people from all walks of life. And like you're saying, the bar, we have a really cool little bar area downtown in Billings, but that's the one thing that's missing is like
there's no food downtown.
There's no food after 10 p.m. And there's all these great restaurants. They all do an amazing job, but at some point they all stop, and there's 4 hours of still good mingling and drinking, a lot of stuff going on. And that's where, I've gone past that shop now. It's been available a couple of different times. I'm like, man, do I need to go back? But again, I've gone through enough of starting over and having to kind of literally every time I moved it or, try to run off to, I actually thought at one point I was going to go to Ohio. In the camper stage of the whole business, it was like really I built out of a big fifth wheel camper trailer because I wanted to do two things. I wanted to kind of show people that like self-powering your business was something that's possible to do. And like I literally had all these solar panels out that I, had invested heavily in lithium-ion batteries and stuff like that. I still have some of them, but like that stuff is stupid expensive.
Oh, sure.
So like that was part of the morphing through was at one point I had this house that I'd moved out of because I was married at one point and I still had this house, but I wasn't living there. I was working and basically living in my shop for a good year downtown. But I was like I could do this in this fashion, but then I had this kind of vision also of doing it in a space that people already, or it's already produced, it's already out there, but just using it in a way that nobody really had seen or done that way. I thought at some point I was going to kind of travel around the country and just, go to wherever I wanted to, wherever I felt like there was a need for me. I had that opportunity to go move myself, and that was out of the pandemic. Like that was just kind of, again, the creating that opportunity out of misfortune. So I was like, you know what, I've had this kind of in the back of my mind to do, and now it's the time to try it. So I literally sold my house to get enough of the capital to put down on a down payment. I had to buy a big old truck to haul that sucker around.
Yeah.
And then literally it was buying all those batteries and those solar panels and stuff like that because I was convinced the microwaves, right? That was why the microwave thing was like kind of out of just crazy coincidence. But then as I really got dialed into it, and that was downtown in that shop, like I was like, I can do this. You can plug a microwave anywhere you can get some power.
Yeah.
And luckily we live in a day and age where there's these powerful utilities that you can use. And like, it's not necessarily, it was like about the greenness. I thought that was cool. I've never sat and looked at the sun and spent some more time like dialing in on what that thing's doing, how it moves across the sky and stuff like that until I did all this. But like, for me, it was always about being like if I had, the opportunity, I could go out to Burning Man.
Yeah.
I could go hang out in something cool like that, and I could produce my business products, and instead of just going out for a vacation, really enjoy the traveling, but you're able to make a living doing it too.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the idea came from like when I was young, my dad and brother and I ran around all the Western states, like riding motorcycles, right? So like traveling and like seeing those people that spend an insane amount of money traveling to do those really cool hobbies, but like you're like, man, what would it be like if you could travel to the next city, but like instead of just forking over cash, man, you have the option to actually make money as you go, right?
Right.
So again, that was kind of where the idea has all kind of come through. I mean, it was literally out of just kind of like almost out of bane in my existence to where it was like now this cool opportunity and like this time and space that like was literally needed. And then things like the pandemic throw you 100% to the other direction and like make things that seem like a good idea, like kind of like, oh crap, that was really, now it's not going to work.
But, it's almost like fate. Things happen for a reason. I think I truly got to believe in that, where it's like, maybe you were meant to just evolve the business into a different way, or maybe it was just a test to make sure you were going to stay headstrong into doing it.
Yes.
You know, everything's a lesson, everything's something to be learned from, and just a test and a trial to overcome.
And I mean, I to plug one of your previous episodes, like when you say to lean into what you love, that literally is like, it resonated so hard that day that I was watching that episode, is like, if you're like what I'm doing now, like I really truly enjoy going out and like hanging out with people. Yeah. And the fact that I can make a living while I'm doing that is like why that was so powerful to me. Like really, I think the hardest thing for people is like to find, what are they going to do with their lives? Like I was that guy, man. I never went to college right out of high school because I was like, I don't really know what I want to do. Like, and even for whatever reason, I knew I barely passed through high school. I was okay at grades, but like I was never doing homework. I was not that guy. Like I was not a in the books type of student. For me, it was all about the experiences and my friendships. You know, I still have guys I run around with from high school, and we're 20 years out of high school now. But like that was what I was about in school.
Yeah.
You know, I was like more about hanging out with my friends, where I was never about the educational part.
Oh yeah.
So
same.
for me, college was like, my parents really wanted me to go to college. You know, I think that was kind of, I think the generation kind of the push to that. That's the way to, you know, to go and progress. I just knew that wasn't for me. And I think everything, like you said, everything happens for a reason. You know, I went, you know, and I'm, you know, struggling sometimes in my life through not having had a good education, having, you know, a degree and stuff like that. But I've always done every job I thought really well. I thought I've always given a good effort. But at some point I was like, why am I not getting, you know, to the step above? Like I worked at the cable company for 3.5 years, and somehow I was never pulled up to be a manager. And I felt very, very much that I deserved those opportunities. It was the same thing at the AT&T. So when I'm literally in, like, this is all before my business started, I'm like, why am I not getting to where I really feel like I should be, you know? And I would say that mindset wise, I was not ready. I was stuck into why not me, like poor me, you know, and that was something that is truly, I don't know, like you said, everything happens for a reason, man. I had to, and it wasn't like a light switched right away, but going through the pandemic and like having my business really almost like got it out from under me for no real fault of my own, but it was like literally out of happenstance, right? But at that time, I'd finally had the opportunity to do something for myself, you know, and I had the option to make things happen. And I really always liked the idea to be creative and like kind of go with my an instinct or something like that. And so that's what I always loved. So even though things were a challenge, I always go back to like, I always love the option that I can do this. Like it's on me, and I can't blame anyone else if it's not working. That's like kind of like eye opening. Like if I'm failing, it's because I'm screwing up. You know what I mean?
Well, and that's a good mindset to have too, because it motivates you more, and if you have that mindset, you're gonna be pushed to continue to succeed.
Yes, and you know, so it's finding something you're passionate about to taking something. I've told that to several people that I've talked to in the last few years. Like, do something that you do for a hobby that you would otherwise do for free, but find a way to make your living. If that, you know, if you're not happy with what's going on, if you don't have a great job, if you're not happy with those things, like you have that opportunity, you know what I'm saying? And that's why I love now on a mindset switch is like, you know, there is opportunity out here. It's not easy.
Right.
And again, just because I had a good idea and like things were going well at one point, like they can go away pretty fast.
Well, and that's a good lesson to learn too, because then you're always, you know, trying to avoid that from happening again, or you're always aware that could happen.
Yes. And so my most recent real take back was, you know, now the trailer thing was a good idea. Like I really had, I thought this option to like what it could utilize, but really I had some good opportunities. I worked here at the KOA here in Billings. You know, it's the world famous first KOA of all the ones all over the country. So I got to work there through the summer and into the fall a couple times with my camper, right? And that was like probably one of the most cool things of this whole experience was like how many times I had people that like live this lifestyle. I mean, they travel all over, and like, you know, not really staying at the Billings KOA for like, this is where they want to come to, like their vacation destination. They're usually on the way somewhere.
Yeah.
Or it's on the way to the parks, or they're on the way from the East Coast to the West Coast visiting family. But I would be honest with you, man, that was probably some of the most endearing part, was like how many times I'd open that door to give these people that food they ordered on this website, and they were like, oh my gosh, man, like this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. You know what I mean? I'm sure it's not literally, but having people say that to me and several occasions is like, wow, this is really, it's really a cool feeling, and getting that affirmation, to keep going, and you're on the right track.
Helps motivate you for sure.
Yeah,
you're getting validation.
100%. Yes,
and you can tell like what you're doing it's not for nothing,
and you feel good about the down times.
Yeah,
like, oh, that struggle was for a purpose. There was, and even now, like there is some other things that I might venture into in my future. But Whole Hog has taught me so much about, and having opportunity and learning to progress my like we've talked about, mindset is, it's out there. The opportunities are out there. You just got to be willing to go out there, and it's a sacrifice. Like, it was scary those first couple days. Like, I was like, dude, what if nobody shows up?
Right.
It's like, this sounds like a good idea, and people are all been encouraging, but like, what if I put all this money? I mean, I put every penny I had into it, man. Like, it was, if I didn't make it, I was going to be in big trouble.
But you got to make the leap. Right.
And so it's so hard to disconnect from my time is X amount. If I go put X hours into, I will have this much to show for my time. And like, not knowing that was going to be the case is, dude, it's crazy how hard that is. But again, you gotta have you gotta have a good idea, but you also gotta have real faith that you can make it.
Yeah.
And again, it was literally the hardest part was getting over that. Like, man, what if this is not as good an idea as and I had my parents, probably, like, I love my parents. I have great parents, but even they told me this is kind of a bad idea. Like, you're crazy for doing this. But like, still knowing that I was convicted in my conviction, I had to do this.
Yeah.
I had to do this, and I had to go through this 4 years of good and bad and ups and downs to open my eyes, man. And for whatever things are going to bring me in the future, I am ready, and I've gone through a lot. I've learned how to build a website on my own. My buddy helped me build the first one, but the second and third renditions I had to do on my own. I had to figure out how was I going to make, these, for the year I was down in the shop during the pandemic, it was like I had to make all these products, and like I delivered them all by myself.
Yeah.
But like, how are you going to really do that when like most people want food around noon and around dinner time and stuff like that? So I was like, I can't go into that sense. I had to figure out how was I going to make people order online, but like literally not combust me during those 2 periods of time a day, because I won't be able to take like 4 of the 20 orders I might get, right?
Yeah.
So literally there was so much to that like, to the, how was I going to make this work and flow with people, but like still make it profitable, still stay in business. And so I had some pretty good months doing it that way. But I mean, I was probably working like 20 hours a day a lot of times.
Damn.
Yeah. Like, because my whole thing was like, well, there is not options for people. That was where I wanted to fit. So, I mean, a lot of my thing would be like at 2 or 3, 4 or 5, 6 in the morning. I'd be in like that little shop taking a little nap on the cot, and then I get an order in. Like, I'd have to wake up and like bust myself out of sleep at 3 a.m. and then go take 4 or 5 sandwiches to these people. You know what I mean? That was where my customer base was at that point. So it was a grind, man.
Oh, it sounds like it.
I don't know that I can say, like, looking back, that was really sustainable for a long period of time, but it was built out of necessity. Like, just, that was the only way I was going to stay afloat, because really the option to where I had really kind of started, it really didn't come back till it was the week after I moved out of the shop. So it was like January of 2021, where people were available back open till 2 a.m. at that point, right? Mm-hmm. Right up until then, it was like 10 p.m., then it was like till midnight. And it wasn't really until it was January of 2021 here in Montana, Billings, that we had bars were back open fully till 2 o'clock close again. So, I mean, if I hadn't made that kind of, and it was really tough, dude. I wasn't ready to reinvest in the business at that time. I mean, like, I was doing good at the first 3 months, but it was like really trying to get money back in my pockets that I had spent to get the thing started. And then it was like 6 weeks of nothing. And then, I had to figure out a way because I don't think I was going to survive 2 or 3 sandwiches coming out maybe once in a while. I had to find a way to fit during the day, during the mornings, during the evenings, and, in the middle of the night too. So
all with one
person. One person. And again, it was, if I maybe had stepped back and probably thought about it, maybe I would have gone ahead and used Uber and some of those guys. Maybe that would have been the better route to go. But I was just like, at that time, I was like, dude, I can build my own application. Like, the hell with Uber and the hell with DoorDash. Like, those guys take an extreme amount of your profit. And like, I was like, man, I wasn't even just let them take all my money. Like, I was like, I could do this all on my own. But like, I was like, I could build my own. I could, there's not a perfect way for this. I didn't feel fit me. So I was like, I'll make that thing. So again, I was the guy that I worked at AT&T. That was probably one of the biggest reasons I had to have gone through that. Like, I hated that job. It was probably one of the most awful corporations I could have ever worked for. I had one of the worst bosses I've ever had in my life, but also one of the best ones. So I don't know if we want to go into that story, but literally at one point there was a time I was doing really well, and it was right at the beginning because I was like gung ho. AT&T had took over DirecTV, and I'd come from the cable side. So I was a football guy my whole life. So I was like dead set on, dude, now I'm going to go sell for the Sunday ticket, right?
Yeah.
That was the biggest thing at cable companies. Like, they go out and they go try to take over satellite customers. That was like kind of their focus in this sales thing I did at one point. And like, literally we would run around town looking for houses with satellites on them. Like, and those are the ones you got to go get those guys. But it's the hardest thing to sell against DirecTV. Because like, if you're a Sunday ticket guy, that was the only way you could get it. How are you going to go tell somebody something they 100% are the only reason they want this particular product? How are you going to go sell against that? Dude, it was the hardest thing. So I'm leaving the cable company, and I'm looking at what am I going to do with my actual skill set. I did that construction thing for a minute in between, but it was like more of a summer thing. So out of like, oh, I'm going to go bust up the cable company now, the heck with them. Now I'm going to go work for the competition kind of. So that's why I did the AT&T thing. And so I got to tell this, hopefully I won't take up too much time. Sorry,
you're good, man.
But I had a kid I graduated with, a good friend of mine who worked at that store. And I walked in for the interview one day, and he's like, dude, talk to me before you leave. It was like kind of like a weird thing. And I didn't see him a lot at that time. So I my good friend Justin, but he's like, no, dude, you got to talk to me. I got something you need to talk about. So he told me, he's like, you don't want to work here, man. He's like, you will hate working here. He's like, the guy that runs this store you won't like it. He's like, I hate it. I'm miserable. Dude, I was
just
like,
what you want to hear.
I was like, Justin, I'm sorry, bro. I'm going to do it anyway. But he was so right, man. That was 100% the most toxic environment as far as a boss I've ever experienced. But out of AT&T, the story, bro, like at one point it was sales. It was selling cell phones, selling tablets, selling accessories, getting people. And that was how you made your living. But like, there's one period of time where it was like, they didn't give a crap about what you sold. The whole focus was to, when you got people in their new phone, you had to sign them into the AT&T application, right? It was like the thing. So I was like kind of a competitive person. So I was like, all right, well, I'll be the best at signing people in this stupid application if that's what you want. But certainly, like, it wasn't right away. But after a few month or so, I was like, man, this is actually not a good thing for me as an individual and what I'm trying to do, make a living. This is really what it's doing, is actually phasing my job out, right?
Oh,
because people are used to, at this point in time, like coming in and getting your cell phone done every couple of years. Get a new one every couple of years. You renew, get your new free phone. They used to try to have you make you feel.
Oh yeah,
right. But what I was essentially doing, and like the company knew this, right, is that when the next year comes around, the next time they go around, we'll offer the renewals and all this stuff right through the phone application. Get you used to go in there to look at your bill and pay your bills and stuff like that. But what they're really doing is force feeding the customer their next phone upgrade isn't going to come from the store. It was going to come from this application. And like a year or so goes by, and I'm like kind of my eyes were open that it wasn't me, selling customers these products anymore. It was me putting on the crappy products that they got from the online, thing. And like now I have to put on the screen glass they already bought from the online website. And then their brand new phone, I have to go switch all their stupid contacts rather than me doing anything I get paid for. Because at that time, still, I never got paid to help people, a wage, you know, but it wasn't why you were there. But now you're like, now I'm effectively I put myself in the position to like almost phase out my own job. And that came from like, that was why when I was doing my own thing, like I was like, it wasn't about me wanting to put a bunch of people underneath to work for me, because I knew that someday, way, shape, and form, we're headed towards automation, right?
Which is scary.
Yeah, it is. But you know, that's where I was like, I don't want to build my foundations today, like in 2019, on having multiple people be responsible for this business to grow or go flat. I wanted it to be about the evolution of technology, right? I wanted to adapt to what I wasn't a technology kind of guy. Like I was not the kind of guy. My brother was the guy. Like he was the kind of guy that would like tell me about new equipment and new things coming up. Like I used iPhone and I still think iPhones are awesome, but like it wasn't like I was the most comfortable guy knowing how to do that. But AT&T taught me one thing, to look at the evolution of the world, because they saw it coming, and two was to get real comfortable with technology, right? I was like, dude, I didn't even like do the software updates.
Oh yeah.
Like when those things come out, like every freaking 10 minutes, I'm like, dude, I hate this stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not doing it. I don't know why, but like to learn to adapt with technology, because dude, you are not avoiding that.
Oh,
it is coming.
It's only gonna get crazier and crazier. Like they have a robot at the airport that delivers your food for you.
Dude, for real.
Isn't that crazy?
Yes.
I feel like I'm living in the Jetsons.
I honestly, and hopefully this podcast blows up, man. Somebody doesn't take my idea, but like that's where I was like, dude, if anything, you got to be able to like think of where your product's going to come out to these people. It's not going to be delivered by a person. So for a minute, I was on my little electronic scooter, running around doing food, because again, I was like, this is kind of where things are headed. But yeah, dude, you're gonna have a drone dropping your Uber Eats order here, not very far from.
They already are dropping off packages.
It's out there.
And stuff.
It's out there.
Like we're five years from now, things are gonna look way crazy. So
again, having everything is for a reason, and the trials and the things, if you are willing to step back and like say, well, it's not to my detriment. I just need to learn to go with what's really these are all coming. So. Yeah, that's
be prepared.
The challenges and those adversities I faced, literally working with I will still say one of the worst human beings as far as leadership is concerned. He wasn't like a bad person. As far as a leader, he was the worst leader I've ever seen. I mean, we had a revolving door of employees, and it was all mostly because this guy chased everyone that was worth a crap off. Because nobody wanted to stick around and work for this guy. I've
fortunately never had bosses like that, but I've known of people that are like that.
And in the same company, which is so crazy, man, I had also in this very same situation the best boss. Like I had, it took some really gung ho on my end. I had to like force my way out of that store, but like to not completely lose everything that I'd gained. And I thought I was an okay person at that job. I was not the best, but I thought it was okay. I had the best boss. Somebody that really, I'll give a shout out, man. The guy Tad, because he still works in this town. If you're ever, and you need a good service, it's. The guy who runs the AT&T there on King Avenue here in Billings. That guy is one of the most amazing human beings, because he was everything that you were not getting at the other job. This guy was that. He's like a good leader. Everyone that worked at his store had been there for like 10 years. Like
that shows a lot.
No revolution. And then our store, which we had twice the traffic, and we underperformed because of just the leadership was so evident that that's how important it is. And if you're working career, if you got a somewhat bad leader, you don't want to show up to work. Everything's really kind of a mess. And then literally I didn't say I loved the job. I never did love the job, because how many times I had to have some lady coming in and yell at, or guy come in and yell at me about their phone that was like nothing I did, or it was really always their screw up.
That's what I hate about customer service.
Dude, like they get so bent out of shape about it. And I'd gone through at the cable company, customer service, like people calling and screaming at you on because their cable box isn't on. You know what I mean? And it's because they got their inputs off ticked or whatever. You know what I mean? People get so undone about things that you're like, I'm on the phone with you, man. How the heck am I going to help you? So everything happens for a reason. All those trials and those were parts of what led me into what I was going to do this thing. I was not going to do the things that I disliked. I was never wanting to build a job if I was ever going to have employees. I never wanted to have a job where I was going to have somebody do something I didn't want to do. You know what I mean? I hated that. I hated the guy who sits up in the ATTC&O office, and this is what we're going to do. This is the expectation. You're like, you have no idea what that's going to bring on me. Like,
Right.
I'm the one that's like literally have to tell all these people why they're not getting a free phone every 2 years. No, now I have to sit there and explain, well, no, you were always paying for your phone, but we just made you think it was free. Like, oh dude, like, you know what I'm saying? Like I was always like, dude, anything
Like
I
you're the
want to
one
build
on the battlefront taking the bullets.
I want the guys on the forefront to have, the same experience that I'm going to have wherever I am in the company too, So that's just kind of where I've come from, where I've been, and then maybe where I'm going to go. So yeah, who knows?
Well, shit, I'll make sure to add a link to for your. Do you prefer? Do you have a website, right?
Actually, right now I don't, because, really, out of in the last stage of my morph it's really not about ordering from me.
Sure.
It's really about me getting in front of you, have what I have available, sold, rather than, and I'm not saying I would turn down anybody that ever reached out to me about an order if I could make it happen, but like really that was where I was like happy with what was going on in my business. So
Gotcha.
It was the websites. It's I can activate it again. I just, there's really not a need for it as necessarily, but like things on Google, like your Google search, right? For a minute there, I was in that trailer and I would move places. It's so hard to get those to move, like your presence, right? People think,
yeah.
I'm here, and like they expect you to be there, and like the information on the internet says that you're here, and it's not that way. Like they get, I think one of my worst Google reviews was just recently before I turned the website off. Was like some poor person, and this is my fault. I shouldn't have done that. But they showed up to where the club was, and there's no sandwich shop there. So that poor guy's like, writes me a bad review, and he's like, where the heck is this place? I'm knocking on this door to this closed up building. He's like, what the heck's going on here?
Damn.
So I don't have a website now. And maybe what we'll cover now is like, I do my podcast with my really good friend here.
Yeah.
So my passion, bro. Like, it's not that I foresee this doing for my living necessarily, but it's just I was an avid college football fan. My team is the Miami Hurricanes, and that's what led me to my buddy, who's I'll say he's probably my best bud right now. Is like I was working at the crappy AT&T store, dude, and this dude walks in with a Dolphins hat, and he sits down, and he's a DirecTV customer, and at this point they were like sending things to DirecTV, like come over to switch over to AT&T if you're Verizon, and so like this is literally how our conversation started, and like it's so funny now, we talk about this all the time, like our relationship, our friendship started with me being like really the most miserable that I've ever been, but we had that cool conversation because it all started with him wearing a Miami Dolphins hat. And that was how the conversation started. I was like, oh, dude, the Canes are my team, bro. And, they play in the same stadium. And he's just like, because he's a huge Hurricanes fan. Like, my buddy Phil, he will talk my ear off about their Miami Hurricanes for hours. So, like, he wasn't wearing a Canes hat, but even just having the Dolphins hat was what sparked our conversation. And literally a 7 or 8 year now friendship. And we do this podcast. We call it CanesCast. But that's, again, to go back to I don't know if I really said why your last episode really resonated with me, but it was like doing something that you love. Like, so I always bicker and moan and complain as a football fan. That's probably part of the most fun of the sport, right?
Yeah, well, especially
how can that guy do that? Or,
exactly. And even when your team's doing good, you can still find something to complain about.
So, like, finally I thought many years of saying things that play out well, and I'm I know what I'm talking about, or this or that, or maybe I'm way off base, was finally sitting down and like we talked about it for a couple of years, and we finally just sat down and like, hey dude, let's just start it. Let's just get on, record however we do it, and like let's just put a presence out there. Whether there's 10 people that watch our show every week or 2 people that subscribe to it or don't care, like just putting on that out there in the world as long as you're
enjoying it.
It's so much fun, man. And like this year is our second season of doing CanesCast. Our first season was we had this intention to do it every week and go on every episode. It was not that.
It's tough.
Canes had a terrible season. Half the time we were like, we didn't feel like doing the show. So far we're going into week 4 and we've won the 3 games that the Miami Hurricanes have played so far this year. So it's been much more positive so far, but as soon as one of these times we're going to lose a game, it's going to be I don't even know we'll do the show.
Do you cover the basketball at all, or is it just...
So Miami had the last couple years, dude, they've really had a great basketball program. So going back like to 2016 or 15 or wherever it was, we had this one coach, Al Golden, and then Jeremy Larinaga, who's still the basketball coach for Miami. So yeah, Phil is like, he's from Miami. I'm from Billings, Montana. My reason for being a Miami Hurricanes fan actually goes to my uncle, who was a huge Nebraska fan.
Okay.
So in the earliest to mid 90s, the Nebraska was the team. Like they were.
I remember.
They were smoking people, and Miami was good before that. But like this is right to this little lull Miami went through. But like Nebraska was the team. So my uncle, he lives in Lincoln, Nebraska. He went to Nebraska to like get his doctorate and stuff like that. Like this guy is like kind of everything I want to do. I want to end up in Miami someday, so I can go watch Canes games every weekend. But I'm kind of, again, I covered that earlier. I'm a little bit of a contrarian, and I love my uncle. He's an awesome human being, but he's kind of a pain in the butt. I remember him like for all these weekends, like he would call every weekend and like just blabber about the Nebraska game. Oh, did you guys see the Nebraska game? This and that and the other thing. And for whatever reason, I remember this Orange Bowl. Like we were in my mom's house. I still remember we had enchiladas this night. We're watching the Orange Bowl, and I'm watching the Nebraska game, and I'm like, man, I just really don't want to have him, because he used to play pranks on us. Like he'd call, like kind of goof with us. I was like, I really just don't want Uncle to have a reason to call and like give us shit. So I was like, I hope this team beats Nebraska, and it was Miami.
Okay.
Warren Sapp, Ray Lewis were on that team, and
one
I'm
of the
pretty
best
little.
teams of all time.
Well, I mean, those two amazing human beings. Football players. They're amazing football players. There's things out there about their character.
Sure.
But I just remember sitting there thinking, God, I really hope Miami wins this game. I really just don't want to have him call and prank us tomorrow for about whatever stupid Nebraska thing you could think of. So Nebraska ends up winning that game. It's a really good game. Miami loses this game. And I was also a Cowboys fan at this time of my life. I'm like 8, 9, 10, and Miami's as a program was like really kind of at the end of their first run. And this was like literally, they were going to 96, 97, 98. I didn't know this as much because I was still little, but they were going into probation. And so they had, there was Pell Grant scandals and some things going on about how they were, running a very successful program, but they weren't all on the up and up. And I was a Cowboys fan also. So Jimmy Johnson was the coach, and he had coached at Miami long before that. He had won a couple national championship, built some really great teams. Then he got on to the Cowboys, and I was a big Michael Irvin guy. I even remember Russell Maryland, being on that team, being a big fan of Russell Maryland. When he left the team, I was pretty devastated that year. Alvin Harper, shout out to Alvin Harper. We were never the same after Alvin Harper left. Even as much as I love Playmaker, Alvin Harper was huge on that team. But so going to my senior year of high school, it was 2001. So I graduated in 2002, but like 2001, 2002 was my year, and that was the 2001 Miami Hurricanes, right?
Yeah. That
is, people still often talk about that being one of the best college football teams ever.
Yeah, because that was
Ed Reed, Alan J. Johnson, John Vilma, DJ Williams, Kellen Winslow, not a great human being. Please don't hold me to that. He is a phenomenal football player, but he was a bad human. But this team was stacked. Sean Taylor, like literally one of the football players I absolutely like to my core, just cherish having been able to watch him play at Miami, because 2002 was his season, like where he really put on, and then he ended up having a very short NFL career because he got murdered, unfortunately, long before he should have ever left this earth, unfortunately. So that team was like, dude. So I was a football player in high school. I wasn't good. I didn't even end up finishing my senior season. I wasn't playing. I was into dirt bikes too, so I was like, all right, well, fine. If I'm not going to play football, I'll go out and spend my time dirt biking. The hell with this team. So as a football guy now, I look back at that as like one of probably my big miscues in my life, regretting not doing that. But I mean, I was competitive. I didn't want to sit on the bench. I just didn't feel like that's where I belonged, and whether I did or did not, it's not really important. But I ended up not finishing that season. But I had my best friend at that time was from Chicago. And he was a phenomenal football player. Dude, like this kid had all the athletic prowess. I mean, he was an insane athlete, but what he really loved was football. right? And I remember, so this is why this is all important. We watched that national championship game like 100 times, man. We sit up in his little room there and we would just sit there and watch games, and like this is all kind of, I'll fill it in between, but like, dude, this is where literally my super fanhood was born, because like that was just like our thing. Like we just sit and watch old football games. Like he would record them and he'd go watch. And he was into film. Like,
yeah,
you know what I mean?
Film studying.
And this
as
is
a fan.
before I was like, oh, I love football, but I don't like it that much.
But you
this
didn't,
guy, this guy totally was the reason why I love. And my friend Corey, I'll shout out Corey, man. Corey was a phenomenal football player, but he was also a very big student of the game. You know what I mean? He loved sports. So that was really what, spending all that time watching that national championship game. And I remember watching that hit Jonathan Vilma put on those guys a couple times right at the end of the game. Like, dude, just destroying these poor guys on Nebraska. So that game and that team was really where it kind of began. The next year, I was out of high school, and that was the 2002 team, which ended up losing the national championship game to Ohio State that year. But like that was where I was like super into it. Like NCAA football was right
in its height.
The best it ever. I mean, it got awesome. It got awesome years later. But like sitting down and playing on PlayStation, like I remember spending hours going and putting all the names in the rosters of these, you know, because they didn't have the names of the players, but they had their number, and like you would go print off from the internet and get the roster and all the teams, and I'd go sit there for, dude, I can't even. I found a stack of those papers one day, like going through all my.
Isn't that so nostalgic when you find stuff like that? Just takes you back.
Yeah, dude. So man, it was really kind of born from those periods of time where Miami was really, really good, and then they had all those players went on to very, very long, successful NFL careers for the next 10 years. A lot of them, right? Jeremy Shockey. Just
God, I forget how many great
Vince
players
Wilfork, Bryant McKinney, Andre Johnson. So here's fun thing maybe we could talk about. I remember back in those days, like hearing that conversation, like the Miami Hurricanes team of 2021 could have beat the Cincinnati Bengals, right? Because they were the worst team in the NFL. And so it was just recently when Ed Reed went into the NFL Hall of Fame, and I remember I firmly believe that. Like as a fan of that team, I thought, I was convinced, that team could go out there and have gone out there and on any given day like beat the worst NFL team because of all the superstar talent they had on that team at that time. So to caveat to that, I think if that team could have gone on into the NFL, let's say they all went to the whole team went to the Miami Dolphins,
sure,
and then 5 years or so they could have developed. They would have been the best. I think they would have won a Super Bowl.
Oh, yeah, that's hard to argue with.
I mean, you had Ed Reed and Sean Taylor line up next to each other, but at the time on that team, they didn't start together. Ed Reed was the starter. Sean Taylor came off the bench.
But if you took all the stars...
Yeah. So, I mean, but again, they had 40 NFL draft picks, like 20, 30 of them were first-round guys. Antrell Roll. These guys, like... But again, that team at that time, and I will say this right now, like there is no college football team as good as you are that could ever get on the field with the worst NFL team. You would get absolutely destroyed.
I remember that was the argument with Alabama. When I was in high school,
and again,
Alabama.
The caveat is at this time in the stage, like this team is not ready to go on and compete in an NFL field.
Right.
Now, if they got to evolve and in their NFL development got to stick together, that team in success, who's to say, right? Yeah, Alabama, LSU, I have a good story. Hopefully maybe come back to, because I saw that LSU team on their first game when Joe Burrow started, because I was down in Dallas.
Oh, sweet.
Yes, so the year before that, I went to the Miami Notre Dame game that ended up being one of the bigger games of the season because they were both highly ranked. And this was like, I was going through my divorce, man. So hopefully you don't get off track. But I was going through a divorce. I was really, really in a bad place. So I was like convinced to my life to have any meaning, I was going to need to go see this team that I was a huge fan of all these years. I spent all this time and effort and energy and a lot of bad times watching this team. So I was convinced I had to go to this game. So I ended up picking that Notre Dame game, somewhat out of against spite, Rudy and all that stuff. We had a kid from our high school that was a really good football player who ended up going to Notre Dame. So like, for some reason, it just became a thing where I like disliked Notre Dame. So we're like, what game am I going to go to? I was like, I'm going to go to this Notre Dame Miami game. Like, I want to watch Miami hopefully crush Notre Dame. That ended up being one of the seriously coolest things I ever did in my life, right? And everything happens for a reason. So I was gonna take my kids, my two kids, and my kids were little. My kids were like 3 and like 1.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I bought enough tickets, and I had my sister who doesn't live here in Billings, but she was gonna go with me to take my kids with me.
And this was in Miami?
And this crazy thing is like these games get scheduled, and like I bought my tickets like before the season even started. But then you don't know what time the games are going to be. They're not set in college football. They change week to week, right?
Depending
you know who's on the schedule, but you don't know if it's going to night game, noon kickoff, whatever it is. That stuff happens like later as the season's going on. So like Miami ends up this 2017 season, the turnover chain season. Dude, like, man, that was a cool season. So these things start snowballing and Miami starts winning. Like we win all of our games. We have some really close calls. The Georgia Tech game was crazy. The Florida State game was crazy. But we ended up winning all these games, and then Notre Dame's winning. I think they lost their first game of the season that year, but then they started really putting it together, and they were a really good team. So it's like a month before the game, and like I realized now this is gonna be a night game. This is not gonna be a noon kickoff. Like this is gonna be at 7 p.m. and it's gonna be a huge deal. So I ended up not taking my kids. I really regret that. They were really little. So me and my sister go to this Miami Notre Dame game, and we just destroy Notre Dame. I mean, the turnover chain got out. It was so crazy. The turnover chain, when it got brought out, like a turnover, was louder than when we would score a touchdown.
Huh.
The one play of the game was when the Trajan Bandy got an interception right before half and took it back and got it. Dude, the crowd was absolutely electric, bro. I'm telling you, I just the game a couple weeks ago, Mark Richt, who was the coach at this time, he said that was the coolest thing he'd ever been a part of.
That's crazy.
So being in that stadium was...
You got to be a part of it.
I have pictures. I lost all my jerseys in the fire and stuff like that. I maybe have a couple things from that game that I still have. But like, dude, being there that night and like, what's so much cooler about Miami as a team? It's kind of a finicky fan base. It's not Nebraska, and I will say here, to give Nebraska their due diligence, bro, they have been a pretty bad program as far as football performance. But dude, they still sell out every game.
They got loyal fans.
They have the most loyal fan base. They sold 92,000 people tickets to go see a volleyball game in their stadium.
I saw that.
This is what I got to say. I got to give them their kudos. Miami would not happen in Miami, bro.
I wonder why that is.
So it's a fickle fan base, but why it is, I honestly think I can put a little pulse to it. Walking out of that stadium is, you're on cloud nine, dude. You're just like, everybody's happy. There's a couple of Notre Dame fans sprinkled here and there. They're not happy. But like the next day flying home, and just being in the airport, dude. And like, you could look at the people flying out of Miami to go wherever they are. And that's what I think is cool about Miami. It's more of a national fan base. So when things are going really well, when the stadium gets filled, it's not necessarily Miami people.
It's not local.
It is me from Montana. It was these people I met talking to from New Jersey. Like, you know what I'm saying? That is why we were all there that night, to be a part of that game. And like, thank God we all were all there, right?
And people aren't going to travel if they're not performing well.
So yes. So we don't sell out. We had our best game of the season this year was against Texas A&M. We win this game. It's a home game. But this stadium wasn't packed. You know what I mean? It wasn't. I think the stadium's loud. It's kind of built with the roof on it now. It kind of holds that energy in now. But like, it's a loud stadium, but it's not a packed, like fully on, like you just get this presence every game. It happens when there's big games, but it's not every game. But that was what it was. That only kind of more recently hit me is like, man, that's when we're leaving town, and I'm talking like it's the next day and you're still on cloud nine. You're like riding to the airport shuttle, and like you're talking to the guy that's got the jersey on too. You know what I mean? And everyone's telling where they're from. They came in from this game, right? So like, the LSU team, like I've been like convinced that was one of the coolest experiences of my life. I wanted that again, so that's why I went to the LSU game. So to get that story picked up, I was a Cowboys fan growing up, and I'm not going to tell you this is a popular thing as a football guy, but I jumped off the bandwagon. It was the 2016 draft where they took Zeke Elliott instead of Jalen Ramsey, and so dude, like the months leading up to that draft, I was like. There was a lot of times they'd pick players that I was like, I'm a big college football guy. There's a lot of these people that I'm like, I wish the Cowboys would have on their roster, right? And most of them are Hurricanes, and they had this thing for the longest time. They never had a Hurricane on their roster. I don't know if it was a jive at Jimmy or what the problem is.
Oh, interesting.
If it was, there's a thing. There's a thing. There's literally talented Hurricanes. Devin Hester used to come in and beat the crap out of us, and he wasn't even a good receiver, and he had his best receiving games against the Cowboys. Santana Moss and Clinton Portis when they were on the Washington Redskins, just kicking our ass. Those two guys I love, and they're on the Washington Redskins, ripping my heart out every weekend, right? So I was like at this time, and so this happened after this, the 2016 draft, I was like, dude, I'm done. If they don't take Jalen Ramsey, he's a Florida State player, and I've watched him rip our throats out as a cornerback.
Yeah.
He literally won the one game that we had a good team, and he literally won the game because he caused a fumble right at the beginning of the game, and he had the last interception to end the game, and he shut us down like the whole second half because we were winning that game. And like, I'm like, dude, this guy is an unbelievable talent. I was like, this is the next. I say he's plus Deion Sanders because he tackles, but he has the mindset, he has the killer instinct, and I'm telling you, I watched this as his opponent, and I'm like, dude, if he's not a Cowboy, I'm not gonna be a Cowboys fan anymore. And that day, I'm literally on my treadmill, bro, watching the draft. And then, like, Joey Bosa goes to the Chargers because I thought the Chargers would take the Jalen Ramsey. That pick right before the Cowboys. And I was, like, sitting there. I was like, dude, yes. Because it was Zeke Elliott or Jalen Ramsey, right? And they pick Zeke Elliott. And I was like, fuck, no. As mad as I've ever been in a game, like, watching my team get destroyed, I was pissed that they didn't take that guy. And I told people, I was like, if they don't take this guy, I'm done.
Well, and
I'm tired of Jerry Jones fucking up every opportunity he has to get us a Super Bowl win. I was like, you put this guy on your defense changes. And they did.
And he's done that to every defense he's been on.
He that season he went to the Jaguars.
Yeah.
And the Jaguars had the draft I thought the Cowboys should have had. They drafted Miles Jack instead of what we took was Jalen Smith, who had a great and a Notre Dame player, but he had that knee injury right at the end of the season. So he wasn't even going to be playing that first year. I was pissed, bro. I was like, I'm a Jaguars fan now. The fuck Cowboys. I need a new team. I was a Jaguars fan because I was like, I'm gonna go with this team.
You're staying in Florida.
I'm gonna die with this guy. Apparently, and my buddy Phil, he hates this. Now Jalen Ramsey's on the Miami Dolphins, so only now recently he gets to drink from the Kool-Aid of Jalen Ramsey. I've been preaching that since the day the guy got on the NFL. So this will hopefully come into why I'm talking about all this. So I'm a Cowboys fan for a long time, and then I'm not. But that's why I went to the LSU game. I was like, well, what game am I going to go to after I've gone to this Notre Dame? Now I've got the hunger. I've got this. I got to do this again. So I buy these tickets to go to the LSU Miami because it's the next season's launch. It's the kickoff game, right? I was like, well, I can go to the Cowboys stadium and see this really cool stadium I've always wanted to go see.
Beautiful stadium.
But now I don't have to worry about the Cowboys ruining my fucking trip.
Yeah.
So it ended up being Joe Burrow's first game at LSU. And I took a buddy with who ended up going with me, who's a Gators fan, and he's a Cowboys fan too. So that's why I convinced him to go with me. And I remember him we watched the teams walk out on the field, and like, it was a noticeable difference how much bigger LSU was.
So wait, why was it at AT&T Stadium?
It was like the kickoff game they do every year. They kind of do a neutral site game.
Okay.
So for whatever reason, I was like, that's why I want to. And so my buddy Phil, he said this on our podcast 100 times. He wanted me to go to the Florida State game that year with him. And I was like, no, man, I'm going to this game. And he still gives me crap about it because that game was a great game. We come back on FSU, 28 points in the second half and beat them at home. Great atmosphere. And I go to the game, we get trounced. And I drove all the way to Dallas from Billings, Montana.
Shit.
I drove the whole way there. And this is the longest road trip of my life coming home, bro. I was like, I was just dead set. Like it was like I knew what was going to happen. We were going to go down there, go back to, I think that's where Miami fell off in our most recent, and we've been pretty bad program for like 20 years. You go back to the LSU, it wasn't the Sugar Bowl, it was like the Peach Bowl or something like that. Devin Hester was on the team, so we had talent on the team, but we should have, talent-wise, beat this LSU team, and they just absolutely destroyed us. Matt, he played on the Packers for a minute. It's not a big deal, but that team basically wiped Miami off the college football landscape because we weren't really successful up until, and I was like convinced, we're going to go in and we're going to put ourselves back on the map, kick off the season. It's going to be LSU. It's going to be amazing. We're going to have the best time. And that's not how it went. And so I'm literally driving home on my way back on the longest road trip of my life. We have like literally, 24 hours of dead silence. My buddy and I don't say a whole lot on the way back. And yeah, man, it was just, from the highest high in the fanhood to the lowest low fanhood. I'm like, dude, I spent all this money, all this time, like just to go watch my team get their ass kicked. But it was good to see that game. Like
Yeah.
really, Joe Burrow wasn't even Joe Burrow that year because they weren't really. That wasn't the year they won it. It was the next year they won it. So this was the 2018 season. They ended up winning the 2019 national championship. But I saw the team that was literally ended up being the best team in the nation that next year.
Mm-hmm.
Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, these guys. I was watching them kind of blossom, and
Which
this
is
kind of
still
where they
cool.
took the stepping stone.
And it was cool to I'm sure it was cool to be in that stadium and stuff like that. I've been there before. It's a great stadium.
Dude, we had good tickets, but it is literally the thing. I wasn't as into the game because after half it was basically we were out of it. But I'm just the TV sitting right in front of you is so much funner to watch that game on that TV than it is to look down on the field.
It's a fan
It's
paradise.
insane.
It's made for
It's
fans.
absolutely insane how that stadium's built. It is a cool stadium. If anyone ever gets the chance to go, hit up that stadium for an experience for sure.
You know what always blew me? You know what my immediate thing that blew me away when we walked up to the stadium? There's a Walmart right across the street. Did you ever see that?
I might have missed that. I
Dude,
don't
it
know why
threw
I
me.
didn't see
I was like, "What the hell?" Like, this is the last thing I expected. Like, across from Cowboy Stadium was a Walmart.
See, there's one down next to the Miami Stadium because I remember my sister and I going to Walmart for the game because we couldn't even get in the stadium. But the guy walks. Dude, the first person I had 3 tickets. I only had to buy a ticket for me, my sister, and my oldest son. My little guy, he didn't even have tickets, so I had 3 tickets. So my sister and I go to that game. We're going to this Walmart, and the first person that walks up to me is like, "Hey, man, you got a ticket for the game?" I was like, "Dude, what is going on here?" It's like, I've been in Miami for 5 seconds. The first person that walks up to me is like, "Do you have a ticket to the game?" I was like, "Dude, it was so crazy." But yeah, I was like, "Yeah, actually, I do, but I don't know why you're asking me. What am I, a mark? Like, what is this, a trick, a scam? What the hell's going on here?" But yeah, Walmart, man, you got to give those people credit. They have a presence everywhere. Every freaking where.
Yeah, and the funny thing, so when I went down to Dallas, it was for a Broncos game, Broncos Cowboys, and we walk in, we're all decked out in our Broncos stuff, and this Broncos fan comes up to us and is like, "Do you know if there's any Broncos stuff in here?" And I'm like, "I doubt it. Like, this is the Walmart across from the Cowboy Stadium. Do you think there's opposing team merch here? Like, what do you? No, I don't think there is. But good luck."
And that's funny because here in our Walmart here in Billings, it's lots of Broncos stuff, right?
But it makes sense.
Yeah,
it's the market for it, but
for
not
sure.
down there.
So to maybe lean into your team because I remember watching that episode and you're talking about your Colorado fanhood. So my brother-in-law, shout out to my brother-in-law Tanner. He's a big Broncos fan. Him and my sister were just at the opening game and watched them lose 17-16 or
Close
whatever.
game.
So yeah, man, poor Broncos.
I mean, I think that I think it sucks because last week was another close loss, but I'm looking at it in a positive light. We were offensively, we looked great. Statistically,
you started putting up some points.
Yeah,
finally.
statistically, we're in like a lot of the top 5s of certain big categories. We're just not winning the games, and the defense is a lot to blame for that. Our defense just isn't hitting the mark like they.
Which was the strength of your team for a lot of years.
It has been for like the last 8 years,
yeah.
and there's room to turn it around. I'm not panicking yet. The biggest thing is there's a lot of really good teams that are 0-2 right now. The Bengals, the Vikings, the Patriots. There's a list of teams that are 0-2 right now that nobody really thought they'd see. And on top of that, in the AFC, there's only 2 teams that are 2-0.
The Dolphins
and the Ravens.
They're
the only 2 teams that are 2-0.
Big Lamar Jackson fan here. I gotta say, dude, like, if I could pick a quarterback to put on my team, that's the kind of athlete I want leading my team. And Tom Brady, all the success in the world, but that's not my brand of football. Like, I want a guy that if I really have to rely on him, can take the ball and make insane things happen with it. And I get a little defensive because people pick on his passing. And I was just about to send some videos to my buddy because he's a big Cowboys fan. We had this huge argument last offseason about how he can't throw the out route. I was like, dude, I wanted to show him every dime Lamar just stopped on people. Sorry to go off on that tangent.
Oh, you're good.
But man, Lamar's he's so much fun to watch.
Oh, for sure.
Like literally like the belief he puts in his team. It speaks for himself. His record. I mean, he's lost 12 games or something in his professional
an MVP.
career.
He
right?
won an MVP.
And that was an insane season. But I'm saying, like, it's not about passing or running. It's about, are you winning games? Like, and like literally that guy when he lines up on the field, he did have a couple of seasons here where he was injured at the last of the season. But like, dude, that team, you're 100% in that game. Like that guy is not you're not getting blown out against Lamar Jackson teams.
And they have great role players too involved with that. Like
Yeah.
he's got a great cast of guys around him.
I still say he needs a big threat where he can just be comfortable to throw a fucking deep route on a guy that he can get up over top of somebody. He has a good tight end.
They say
Let's
Zay
say
Flowers is
Mark
like
Anderson
the guy.
is that not. He's a fantastic tight end, but I'm talking about a guy with receiver speed that can go stretch the field from the X position, like get downfield, that you can throw the goddamn ball up once in a while and get a freebie. But Zay Jones, he looks really good. But they went and spent all that money on Odell Beckham, and I'm like, that's not the guy.
No.
And I was like, Odell Beckham 5 years ago, sure, but not now. He's not the guy.
Add depth, I think, and just to like get a little something going there. But so far, it's working out for him.
I think honestly, the best thing they did was pay the guy his fucking money.
Yeah,
like,
that was crazy that they were even in that dispute.
And so to go back into like why I do a podcast now and talk about football is like I'll say shit to like my friends and then it comes true later. Like, and I'm like,
don't you love that?
God, I wish that shit was on record. You know?
I do that. I used to do the same thing. Like just throughout.
I hit more than I miss. I promise that shit. I promise that shit.
And sometimes you make predictions and they don't come true.
Yeah. So like the Cowboys thing. I hopefully don't get off tangent, but like the Cowboys ended up being phenomenal that season.
Yeah.
The season I jumped off the bandwagon. They go 13-3. Zeke Elliott and Dak Prescott, like literally rookie of the year and best player. And the Jaguars were shit. But I knew it wasn't. I knew that wasn't. It was false. It was false hope, bro. Because the next year, the Cowboys were shit, and the Jaguars had the best season they've ever had. They should have fucking went to the Super Bowl.
Oh, is that when they went to the AFC Championship?
That was the game they got fucking robbed and pass interference bullshit penalties on against
Blake
Patriots,
Bortles,
right? Yeah. And Blake Bortles was a crap quarterback, and he was still good enough. Like just based
defense.
that was a defensive team, and that was that's what I said. Jalen Ramsey will change your defense,
and he did.
The attitude, and Calais Campbell, I gotta say, my man Calais Campbell had a lot to do with that too, because they were, but that was what I knew the Cowboys would have gotten had they gotten Jalen Ramsey at that time. You know what I mean? And the Cowboys have done a lot of good things lately. I have to say that. Jumping off the bandwagon, I'm still not a Cowboys fan. I don't religiously watch their games. I don't pay attention to who's on their team. Dude, for 10, 15 years, I would have told you I could name every guy on their team. I knew where they went to college from. I knew their story. I mean, from the moment of spring summer workouts, bro, I was like listening to podcasts back then about every practice, every detail, bro. Like, that's how deep I am when I go into something, right? But that's what's, kind of like the evolution. So now it's more, my focus is really to the college game. I like when and it's not always just the Miami Hurricanes. Like, I can appreciate college football as a whole. Like, and so like you were touching on the Colorado thing.
Yeah.
Like I'm convinced if he sticks around, I probably won't make one this year, but if he sticks around next year, I'm going to go to a game in Colorado.
That'd be sick.
Just to be a part of the presence. Like, just see what's going on in the I think Dion, again, I was a kid in the 90s, bro. So when Dion wore a dude rag, bro, like I wore a dude rag. Like, bandana, I was running around like my grandpa, I still remember my grandpa like, take that thing off your head. You look stupid. And I was like, dude, Dion does it, grandpa. Like, he looks so badass, bro. I gotta do it too. And then like the things he says, I don't 100%. I don't think everything he says is like legit. I don't think he believes everything he says. But when he says it, it comes out like it like seeps into you. You know what I mean? The words he says.
He's a good coach.
And that's what I'm saying. To lead these types of human beings, and the game's changed. It's not about. You got to stroke egos. You have kids making fucking money now in college football. So how to manage that structure? It's not like you can just go and sit there and drone on people because they'll leave. You know what I mean? Your best player, if he's not that kind of guy.
Yeah.
You'll run him off. Good or bad. I'm not saying there's really the best way, but I really feel like what Dion's doing at Colorado, and Colorado was a trash program. And I remember go back to that 2001 season. I remember watching that Colorado game when they beat Nebraska. So Nebraska gets to play Miami in the national championship. I didn't think they deserved to be there. Eric Crouch was the Heisman Trophy that year. I didn't think he deserved the Heisman Trophy, right? He got beat. Colorado kicked the shit out of Nebraska that game, and Nebraska was rolling up to that point. And they ran into a buzzsaw that was Colorado right there.
Yeah.
Bobby Purify and Chris Brown. I remember those two guys just having these unbelievable games running the ball, right? I remember that Colorado game like it was yesterday. And then they really kind of have gone by the wayside, right?
Exactly.
Him ending up in there for whatever reason, like, I'm just glad he's not at Florida State, because if he was at Florida State,
that was one of the options, wasn't it?
They would absolutely be I'm afraid of Florida State. They're a good team this year. I'm not saying we're going in there and we're getting a dub, but if Dion goes to Florida State, if he ever ends up there, like, we're in trouble. It's the last place on earth I ever want that guy to show back up.
I think he's gonna be in. He'll be in Colorado for a little while. I don't think he's just gonna up and leave right away. I hope not, at least.
Who's to say? The game is it's so much different. There's not really loyalty as much on the players' side. I think at the coaching end, like, they'll get. What's so discouraging me, and this is having gone through coaches that you're excited about, and then all of a sudden they don't work out, is you've got to have time to, like, really see what's coming in, develop it, and see your plan through. The NFL is the worst, bro.
God.
The Cardinals, like, the fact that they're changing their coach every year, it's why they're a shit team.
That's why the Browns were so bad.
They were so bad for so many years. And what's crazy is, like, dude, how can the Patriots not have a losing season for 20 years and the Browns can't have one winning season?
Yeah, what's the
Like,
common denominator?
How is that
You have structure. You have structure.
So,
you're not an ever changing, system that's never. There's no.
And I mean, Belichick, he was kind of a failure. I mean, he was a great defensive coordinator, I think, under Bill Parcells. And I'll sit here to say that was the best thing that the Cowboys ever did, was bringing Bill Parcells into the equation, because he built a team that was very, very successful that died off by the time I jumped off the bandwagon. Like, by that time, all the good players that he'd put in the program had all gone away, and then people I didn't give a shit about anymore. So they're doing an okay job now. I got to say again, I got to give the Cowboys credit. They've got the best defense in the NFL right now.
For now,
Micah
over
Parsons
2 weeks.
is an insane
he's a stud.
talent.
Micah Parsons is a stud.
I was really, really kind of he went to Alabama, but Trayvon Diggs, I really liked him as a player. Him going out with his knee injury is really kind of tough. But
Bummer.
Yeah, man, that's tough. That's the only part of the game that you really hate, is the injuries. Nick Chubb, I'm not a Chubb fan, but man, that poor guy, getting his leg fucking.
I had him in fantasy,
again.
So I miss him.
Oh man, that was so brutal looking.
That was a rough one.
Yeah,
and he had a similar injury, didn't he, in college?
Yeah, it's a meme. Like, you see him, his leg all folded over, dude. And shout out to this, like, on that 2001 team, Frank Gore.
Yeah,
Frank Gore, man. That man had 2 major knee injuries and 2 major ankle injuries before he really got rolling in his NFL career. And the fact that he had a 17, 18-year career
as a running back,
and he's the second leading rusher. I can't remember if he got past Barry. I apologize, but
he's up there.
He's like either 1 or 2
or
3. A man that's going into the Hall of Fame. He was the 3rd best running back on that team in college.
That's wild.
Clinton Portis, Willis McGahee the next year, because it was supposed to be Willis and Frank that 2002 season, and Frank got his knee injury. It wasn't really Willis. Willis he should have won the goddamn Heisman Trophy 2002. Like, the 2002 Heisman Trophy should have been Willis McGahee's.
Who ended up winning?
I can't even remember.
Hmm.
Carson Palmer. So Willis McGahee only got that season because Frank was injured, and so Frank, he came back. He could see it, man. His body was a lot heavier, and he was an okay running back, but he just wasn't the talent I thought that he was in 2001. Because, I mean, he was a freshman on that 2001 team. He had like 800 yards, and a lot of his big games came against kind of the lower competition. But I mean, he put up 800 yards on a team that was awesome. Then next year he misses the whole season because he's out with a knee injury. So 2003 he comes back, he was okay. He was still getting his way back. 2004 he slims down. He's like the man again, and then he has another knee injury.
Shit.
Right? Then he has 2 major ankle injuries going into the 49ers, like early in his career. But like the fact that this guy is literally running on, I don't even know what the guy was running on, but dude, how awesome was that guy's career, to watch that. Yeah. So shout out to Frank Gore.
Absolutely. I could talk football all day.
Dude, right?
Unfortunately, we're getting toward the end. We got to wrap it up here.
Yeah, man. This has been awesome, man.
Dude.
I can't thank you enough for taking time out of your day to let me come over and record this with you, man. This is awesome.
Now you know where I'm at, and we'll definitely have to do a second one.
I definitely think so. And we're going to have you on our show.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
To come on and talk on a CanesCast also.
Yeah, I mean, I can... I don't know a lot about the Hurricanes, but I can give my football opinions.
We just love football.
Yeah.
And I think what we've talked about is, like, there's 15, 20 weeks of the college football season, and then like to really, like you're saying, like to get a good presence, you gotta have people counting on it, having a show once a week. So I definitely think once we get into the off season and have more of a football focus, dude, let's get more people on. So we would love to have you on, and hopefully not terribly distant future.
No, that'd be rad, man. And I'll leave a link to the podcast at least.
Oh, thank you, man.
In the description, so people can go check that out.
Oh yeah.
But as I told you before we sign off, I got to get a positive or motivational message from the guest to the audience.
And I think what really popped in my head, it was like the first thing I thought of is like learn to fail. You know, to expand on it real quickly is I think that was the biggest thing in my life that I was like certain I couldn't deal with failure. I hate failing. I'm a competition person. I want to always win, but like being afraid to fail was like my MO. But going through all these experiences we talked about, like literally that was the biggest thing that I've now got comfortable with is failure isn't an indictment on you as a person. Like you're not a failure. Failing is okay. It's actually something you should get used to. You know what I mean? So don't be afraid to fail. You know, chase your dreams, go for the things that you think you're not right for, you're not, maybe don't deserve, or whatever it might be. Fuck that. Fail. Learn to fail, even if you're not ready for it, and you find that out in the hard way. You're taking steps to the end goal, and that's you're going to learn why you failed by failing, and you won't do that the next time, and you're going to get to where you want to go. So that was what I wanted to share with you and your viewers.
Hey, I dig that. That's awesome, and I agree with that wholeheartedly. So, right on. Well, hey, if anybody sees Garrett out there slinging sandwiches, get one of them. They're delicious. And check out CaneCast. And everybody out there, don't forget, life's a garden. Dig it. Just gotta keep on keeping on.
Life's a garden, dig it, you make it work.